All right, so let's know about the background for XML.
An extensible markup language, XML, document describes the structure of data. XML and HTML have a similar syntax, both derived from SGML, Standardized General Markup Language. XML has no mechanism to specify the format for presenting data to the user. An XML document resides in its own file with an .xml extension.
Right, so there was a language called Standardized General Markup Language, and from that, there are two more markup languages invented, is XML and HTML. But XML and HTML has two different regions of creating two versions of HTML. HTML is complex, like it's a different format, presentation style. Then they simplified it and got two different scripting or markup language. And don't be scared that XML has no mechanism. It doesn't mean that it is not unstructured. Rather, HTML has a specific tags, but XML is flexible to create new tags, adopt new tags created by the user. That's why it says no mechanism, but that doesn't mean that it is too unstructured. It is structured, obviously. And XML document has this .xml extension. And if you look at this timeline, so SGML, that's a Standardized General Markup Language, that's in 1985, and HTML started in 1990s, I say. I'm not giving a specific year, 1990, because in some records you might see 1993, so say 1990s. And after that, in 1995 or 1998, in this period, the XML markup language is created. So it's kind of, say, around 22 years old language or markup language. So let's see, know more about XML. So in this slide, you can see some syntax rule of XML. And you can see here, XML must have a root element. So XML has a root, then it started with the child tag, then sub-child tag, and then you have to close all those different tags. So this child tag will be closed here, this root tag will be closed there, and this subchild will be closed here. So every tag needs to be closed. In the right side, you can see there is an example here. And this tag, this line, is just a comment. And it is telling that what kind of encoding and version of the XML. Now, this is a simple message, right? Say this note is presented by XML. So if you use a text editor, we can say, okay, Tove, tell Jenny that don't forget me this weekend. So how do you make this? So we make the root tag is note and we close it here. Then the message is going to Tove and message coming from Jenny, and the message type is reminder, and this is the actual message, this body. So you can see a simple message can also be presented in an XML form. Okay. Now, because we said like every XML document must contain one root. So let's see this example, how the root works. So this XML example has two books here. So the root is book, right? This book closed here, then book 1, and there is an article in that book. So book ID is 123 and it is in the library. Now author, title, and the year the book published, and one of the article is referenced. Inside that book is article ID, reference, and the author of that article. And see, as we say, book is root and book, then it goes in book, location in the library, and this is the article inside the book, and that's why you use this reference. So this article is reference from this book ID 123, then author, title, and year. And for the article also author and the title. That's all about this XML file. So at this point, I can stop. Okay. Now XML element. So what is XML element? Let's read this slide.
An XML document contains XML elements. An XML element is everything from, including, the element's start tag to, including, the element's end tag. An element can contain text, attributes, other elements, or a mix of the above.
Right. So when you see an XML document, if you see something inside a tag, say this title, this is an element. Author, this is an element, and every element need to be enclosed with the closing tag. And interestingly, the elements contain text, and this is the primary type or the only type of a XML document. So there are different kind of data, but the advantage of XML is it don't bother with the data types. It just representing a data as an element, whatever the type is. And if you say attribute, we can also, and in XML, every numerical data also called the text data. Okay. All right. So let's see the difference between XML and HTML.
Extensible set of tags. Content-oriented. Standard data infrastructure. Allows multiple output forms.
Right. And in HTML, this side is extensible set of tags. So unlimited number of tags created by the user. But HTML has a fixed number of tags. Content oriented, and this is presentation oriented, because HTML is created to present data in the browser, right? It's not like the content to keep the content. Content keeping is, you can say, database files are content for content creation, right? So that's or keeping the content inside a file, but HTML only for displaying. Standard data infrastructure, no data validation capability. So HTML tags itself don't validate data. Allows multiple output forms, single presentation. So it's only present the data, but in XML has different kind of use. But primarily the difference between XML and HTML is, for XML, it keep the records or keep the data, and you can share that data as an XML file over the internet or whatever. But HTML is not for keeping data, not for keeping records. It's rather only display data in the browser. I hope you understand the difference between HTML and XML. Now, so we know the structure. So we know XML must have a root. Then XML has combination of elements. So those are those things. And every element need to have a tag. And that tag would be an element, means a text, or an attribute kind, or mix of text and attribute. Now, what is an attribute? Say here you can see this book. This is the root. Now started book category here 1 and here 2. Those are those attributes. And those attributes are marked as with double quotation. Now we started this element thing. Title, author. So those are those elements. And those are those elements. Right? You can see title, author, year, and price have text content because they contain, and we need to be parse them. Those are those parsable content of this XML file. Bookstore and book have elements content because they contain elements. Book has an attribute such as category, that child, or web. So every book has a category. That's this XML file is presenting. Now, so building blocks, we know it has a root and tags, but I added another slide for clarification. And you can see here, elements means tags are primary component of XML document that we know. And you can see those are those, but here is a new thing here. If you like to put a comment, then you have to use this format to put a comment, okay? This one is a comment. And in some places you might see this double, go here. Yeah, you can see like this double. But most cases you will see a single minus or double minus for comment, but it started with this exclamatory sign. Now for these attributes provides additional information about elements. So the book information is title, price, author, right? But the attribute is telling us that what kind of book it is, and comment start with this and end with this. All right, so we know, now we know the structure and comment. Now we are going to know the basic rules. What are those rules of creating an XML file? So let's read this slide.
XML is case sensitive. All start tags must have end tags. Elements must be properly nested. XML declaration is the first statement. Every document must contain a root element. Attribute values must have quotation marks. Certain characters are reserved for parsing. And.
So those are those reserved character 1, 2, and you know those are creating tags with those, right? We know those quotation mark and single and double quotation mark and this ampersand or and sign. Those are those reserved for to creating an XML document. And the most important is XML is case sensitive. So when you are creating an XML document, try to write everything in lowercase. But if you do mixed match, then it will consider as a different element in XML. Now, common errors of element naming. So when you will be naming, we have to be careful how to name those tags and attribute types. Let's read it.
Do not use white space when creating names for elements. Element names cannot begin with a digit, although names can contain digits. Only certain punctuation allowed, periods, colons, and hyphens.
Right. And you can see here, element name, then attribute 1, attribute 2, element name, and this is the content. And here in this slide, I also added an example. This is the version type. And now this root element is contact info. Address category is the attribute. Is it a business? Yes. Now the company information is whole world. We can add an hyphen here to make it more precise, so there is no white space. And company is Canadian Coal, and this is the phone number. We can remove this white space here. There should not be white space. And address, and this is the contact info. So I hope the rules are clear to you, but we have a couple of more slides with more examples with these rules. So the rules we created, or the rules we just studied or have a look or learn, document type definition. So these rules are called the document type definition. This is document type definition is part of those rules. So let's read this slide.
A document type definition, DTD, allows the developer to create a set of rules to specify legal content and place restrictions on an XML file. If the XML document does not follow the rules contained within the DTD, a parser generates an error. An XML document that conforms to the rules within a DTD is said to be valid. The DTD starts with doc type delimiter. An element tells the parser to parse the document from the specified root element.
Right. So, we learned some rules here, and these DTD rules will certify if these rules are valid or defined by the author. If the rules are not valid, then we might get some error while parsing that XML file. Okay. And excuse me, this DTD starts with these keywords or this format, okay, or delimiter. And an element tells the parser to parse the document from the specified root element. We are going to see this example in our next slide. Now the reasons to use a DTD.
A single DTD ensures a common format for each XML document that references it. An application can use a standard DTD to verify that data that it receives from the outside world is valid. A description of legal, valid data further contributes to the interoperability and efficiency of using XML.
Right. Because XML has unlimited number of tags, so we must have an agreement or DTD. So how to form those tags? So this is telling us that say HTML has certain number of tags. So we know what is this, but a user is trying to represent a different data with a different tags based, and tags will be on XML document based on the data type or nature of the data. So that's why it is telling why DTD is so important. Now you will be more clear in this slide that how DTD helps to create good documents. Now, this is the XML document at the left, and at the right is the DTD rules or DTD instruction for this XML file. And you see, all started with this. So when you parse, this is telling that this is not to be parsed. Those are metadata of this XML file. And you know what is metadata? Metadata is data about data. So this XML file is containing a book list. And this book list, again, this book list from book here, this book to this book is the root element, right? Here. And after that, those are those attributes of the book. It's a science type and it's a hardcover book. Then it started the author name, and this is only taking the author name just for simplicity. Now in these DTD examples, you can see this is a book list, right? Now element is book, author, and you can see here this keyword is very important, means PC data. So it stands for parsed character data. That means when you say we are going to see an example, so we'll retrieve some data from XML file and store in a table. So we'll be parsing that using MySQL. So when we'll be parsing, these PC data would be parsed and will taken to the database. So all other data will be ignoring for this. So if you look at this DTD, then you will know, okay, we are going to parse those things for our data processing. Now, attributes are also important data. So it based on how do you create this XML file, whether you like to parse it or not. So you might even parse the attribute type by creating a different tag. So don't confuse with that, because sometime in the database we see the book attributes in the database too. I hope it clears you. So these DTD are set of rules to create an error-free XML file. That's the idea. Now, more examples here. This example has only the house of address. So you can break this thing in a different form, like the street name, number, postal code, but they keep it in a single form. So I believe this is not a good example, this one. Rather, if you make this file, XML file like this is a way better presentation. And those are, you can see, are parsable element for this address. Okay. Now in this slide, I put a messy or not appropriate or not well-formed XML file and a bad example. So you can have a look and you will understand like why tags are important, and we need to properly format these child, then subchild tags or elements in an Excel file so that it increases readability and also helps programmer to parse that XML file. So in this slide, you can see converting an relational database to an XML. So you can see here in this ER diagram, there are 3 tables, right? Store, book, and the store itself. And there are attributes here. Those need to be parsed, right? And you can create an unlimited number of tags. So you can create a root, then child tag, then the subchild tag, and you can put those in this format. And they give us, so store is the root, then the book information and store information. So name and phone number of the store, book, title, authors. So here it is incomplete. So you can add more, you can add more content here, and it will take this general format. And I believe you can create this XML file by using this ER diagram. Okay. Now we are going to a practical part. So we'll be trying to parse or process an XML file to have data retrieved to a table from an XML file. So in the week, let me find that. In the week 10, I already added those. I'm going to make those available for you after my lecture. So week 10 code files. And you can see this person. Let's wait this one. Open this one with Notepad. So you can see this list. You can see this list is the root. Now they started this person data, person 1, 2, 3, 4, and their information, name, first name. We can actually format this with person 1, first name, last name. Now person ID 2, first name, last name. Person ID 3, first name, last name, and number 3. So this is the XML file. It's not like good format, seems like. And we are going to parse this to a table. So person goes here, 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 here. So you can see if we create this, format this will be much better presentation. This one like this. So this is one person's data. So those are those person's information here. And in this file, they are showing in 2 different form. So it's a plain form, and this form is more organized. So let's see what is there. So let's create this table, person table first. So let's go back to, I need to open my I need to open my XAMPP. Start, going admin. So let's go in SQL. And we'll be using this test data. So go here and create table, primary key, timestamp. Oh, I'm missing a bracket. It is in the timestamp. Okay, inside. Okay. All right, so let's run this code. And it created this person table. And it has these, if I go here, columns. So those are those columns for this 1, 2, 3, 4 columns for this person table. Now let's go here in the shell and MySQL user root -p. So we are in the right place. Show tables. Okay, use test. Show. Okay, good. So we have person here. Now let's go back to the slide. And this is the path of the person XML. And when I was testing the code, I actually posted that file already there. So in C XAMPP MySQL data and test. So I put this XML here, but you can put any other location, this XML file, and access it from by changing this path. Okay, it's up to you. So we did this, and now we are going to run this code from the shell, and it says 8 records and 600. So now let's see, select all from person. See, and let's go in XAMPP here and select person. You can see all data is here. Resume recording, and let's go to, so we have here test database, and we are going to choose person, and you can see person here. Now let's go in export. And call it as person 1. And I'm going to choose this XML, and I'm pushing this go button. So it's created this XML file. So I'm keeping it, and let's open show in folder. Try to open this file with Notepad. So you can see here, they nicely made all those things. And the initial file that we used here, right? So this one is created by, we exported it, and it has table name. It's more like more specific way. So it says which database, now which table, and then instead of our first name, last name, and ID, so those are considering as an attributes, these column names, and then they put this data element the right beside it, and they created a new tag column in the system, but we use a different tag person. So now you understand how XML could be retrieved from a database, or from a from XML file to a database. Okay,